limitations and the complications of each. And yet, training of clinical cancer specialists takes place in systems and is governed by authorities that are independent of each other, so that during their training, specialists have little or no formal training in the other disciplines. They are therefore denied the opportunity of learning and understanding about each other's specialty during training. This arrangement is bound to limit mutual appreciation of the role of each, and undoubtedly reduces the value of multidisciplinary meetings. It represents a kind of educational apartheid. Multidisciplinary care requires multidisciplinary training. In 2016, the European Commission approved a proposal from Ireland for cross-disciplinary training of cancer specialists. And in February 2021, the Beating Cancer Plan of the EU supported action on the development of such a programme for medical specialists and also cancer nursing specialists. A consortium of 33 partners from within Europe was convened under the administration of the European Cancer Organization. The objective was to develop, within a period of 18 months, a training curriculum for cancer specialists that can be incorporated into existing training programs across the EU and beyond. This curriculum has now been completed and has been published. We hope that it will be accepted and implemented in Ireland by the Royal College of Physicians, the Royal College of Surgeons, and the Faculty of Radiology of the RCSI. Groupings, of course, that are responsible for the training and accreditation of specialists across the medical profession. The purpose of this initiative is not to replace or to supplant existing programs, but rather by adding scope and dimension to make them better. It is envisaged that for cancer surgery, radiation therapy, and medical oncology, trainees, where possible, will spend some time, perhaps a month or so, in each of the other two specialties. And a corresponding arrangement could take place for cancer nursing. By cooperating with existing cancer centres and training institutions, it is expected that the current duration of training need not be prolonged or extended. Phase 2 of the programme has now been funded by the Commission and involves the participation of 100 cancer centres as the programme evolves. These developments indicate a beginning of a process of interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary training of cancer specialists that can be extended to other disciplines in medicine and also to the nursing specialties and to other areas of specialised healthcare such as physical therapies and psychology. In addition, as the value of this kind of training becomes clear for cancer care, it may also be relevant to other areas of healthcare, such as cardiovascular, neuromuscular, skeletal disease, and even mental health. It deserves the support of all relevant trainers and educationalists. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor O'Higgins. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Charlene Dean, who's a gastroenterologist and has a particular interest in gastric screening.
Thank you very much. So Professor Galvin, you were right. There is a gastric cancer screening programme being set up in Ireland. That's who I'm here today representing. The lead PI in the Irish group is actually Professor Colm O'Moran, sitting here in the audience today. And other members of the TOGA's research team within Ireland include Dr. Kerin, who is the Beacon Research Manager. I myself am currently doing my MD on the process of gastric cancer screening implementation under this project known as TOGAS. So TOGAS is an EU for Health funded project. It currently involves 20 different partners in 14 different countries in the EU. It's a 3-year-long programme. It involves 3 different pilot studies, all around gastric cancer screening implementation in the EU specifically. So we're currently funded to be involved in Pilot 1, which is largely based on the concept of primary prevention of gastric cancer. This relates to screening for Helicobacter pylori, because the WHO recognised that H. pylori is a class 1 carcinogen back in 1994, and it's been forecasted that by implementing the optimal screening strategy within the EU, that we could actually reduce the amount of gastric cancer cases by 49,000 by 2040. So that's essentially the premise of this programme. We want to find out, okay, well, how feasible would it be within, say, the Irish setting, but also our EU partners will also determine that within their respective countries. And also, what will the uptake rate be? So who will actually respond? Who will go on to participate? What is the true incidence of H. pylori within the Irish population? Because we don't actually know the answer to that question. We have an estimate, but the estimate is based on older trials which were largely conducted in a hospital-based settings in patients who already displayed symptoms. So we don't know what the true incidence is within an asymptomatic Irish population in order to determine if a screening programme for H. pylori is even viable in the first place. So over the period of the next 2 to 3 years, we're hoping to find out the answer, and I'm delighted to be here today to meet our counterparts as part of the Beating Cancer Plan. And we've already met Dr. Redden, and it's nice to meet you as well, Professor Galvin.
Okay, I guess we can open it to questions from the floor. I suppose one of the challenges, just at the beginning to ask in the context of EU for Health and Europe's Beating Cancer Plan and all that, how can we, as a country, do we need to go as a series of individual institutions, as individual researchers, or as a national, Department of Health-led consortium to see where we go, or is it a mix? If I might ask. Yeah.
I can tell you the experience of the lung program. I think there's lots of different ways to engage. From our perspective, the SOLACE project was run, or it was a consortium through the European Respiratory Society. So there were a couple of different touch points. And I think in my experience of this, the most important thing is to have a champion. Somebody who is going to just put it on their back and figure it out. And that's always the case, I think. So I think it can start with one or two of those champions, and then broader engagement from there. And usually that allows it to develop organically from the people, I think, who really want to drive it.
How does today's conference fit into that mix then, is the question, I suppose. Richard and Donald, if I could ask you just in the context of seeing how that all ties together, what would be wins from today for you?
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I think the big thing is to get the message out there that this programme is now in existence and it is different to the previous EU models. So back around Horizon 2020 and things, they were very much based around, as Liam said, this idea that you would be part of that group and you'd be asked into a group. Really what we want is that Ireland will be to the forefront of some of these forthcoming applications. And because the model has changed, particularly with regards to the interaction between us within the NCCP and the Department of Health, it's really to provide that education. But ideally what we'd like to see is that some of these projects will go on to grow into bigger projects, because that's ultimately the only way that these things work. And I suppose, we've seen that in the past. Breast Predict, as you were part of, funded by the Irish Cancer Society, I think led to, and Liam can correct me on this, approximately 20 full-time researchers working in Irish academic institutions on breast cancer. And to me, that's what we need to do to grow that. That would be a success.
I just want to come in on that. I think, just our experience even over the last couple of years with EU for Health is that, the whole idea behind EU for Health is that, there's an alignment between national and European policies. So we do need to get the national member state authorities on board. And in this case, it was a really good example of, so this screening call came out, and I reached out to Alan Smith, who's in the audience here today, to the National Screening Services, to bring them on board, because you need to have a champion, but you need to have the support from the people that are going to be implementing this if it does get on board. And I do think the National Cancer Hub is going to be a significant player in terms of it providing a platform for these discussions to take place, of bringing the relevant stakeholders together, so then we can identify who wants to take control of this if there is an opportunity down the line that we really want to go for. So I see this as playing a massive role. I mean, I already work very closely with Lehman in trying to spread the word, but there could be more events like this to bring people together, because a lot of people are busy and they see opportunities coming in their inbox, but they don't realise the potential of them. So it's really landing it in the best possible way, and I think we can work really closely together on how to do that.
Niall?
Thank you. I agree we need champions, but we have champions. In my lifetime, as things have gone on, I've seen more and more champions, and we have them. But champions can be knocked out from time to time unless they're supported at the highest official level. Now, I think this European enterprise is amazing, and it has been led by many people in this room and outside of this room. But I do think we need official statements reinforced from time to time by the Minister, by the Department of Health, by the Taoiseach, who is a terrific supporter of cancer development in the country, and by the Taoiseach. And the message must be, and it can be easily brought out to the community at large, the importance of supporting the champions that exist and moving it on towards Europe, where there's huge support in Ireland for European developments.
Josephine? Yeah.
Thank you. And just to build on what was said earlier, I think it's at individual level, it's at organisational level, it's at national level, it's at European level. We can't just think that the individual champion can do it on their own. We need that organisational culture piece where people are enabled. We need clinical academic career frameworks. We need systems that enable research. That's at an individual level. Organisations that value research. And we need the Health Research Board, the Department of Health, to link in with the European Union, AICRI, and the various organisations in the NCCP. So it's a multi-level response to optimise our access to funding at an EU level. So I think it really needs to be thought about in that multi-level way, from my perspective. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, Mark Lawler. Sorry, was there? Sorry, I see Mark's hand up. Sorry, I didn't see Helen. Yeah. And then Mark.
I was just going to very quickly say, of course, that kind of within the department we do have a strong kind of European liaison system there with the relevant units, but also that we do liaise with the HRB, that we do kind of do our best to make sure that we're not the only ones who are represented on these projects. We do very much see the value of the rest of the community being represented on projects. So we're very, very supportive of, say, the HRB in their role in disseminating stuff as well. So just to get that in there.
First, delighted to see somebody in implementation science on the panel. We don't have enough of it in Ireland. We need to have a lot more. But my question actually is in relation to screening. 2003, the EU Council came up with recommendations in relation to screening. I'm going to be controversial in here, say they didn't really work for the whole of Europe. So how is it going to work again now in 2023, where they've reiterated in relation to what's going to happen for breast, bowel and cervical, but also then prostate and gastric and lung? So how are we going to get it right this time? Because we certainly didn't get it right on a European level. We might have in individual countries, but we didn't get it right. If you look at the numbers in relation to the screening uptake across Europe, they're pretty poor, to be perfectly honest.
I'm happy to throw my head above the parapet in this one. So just obviously when it comes to prostate, listen, I don't know where to start. You can just imagine that it's been such a journey, you know, that the data that a decision like that would have been based on back in 2003 would have been very poor. None of the prostate cancer screening trials to date at that stage had identified really any benefit in prostate cancer screening. It was only when the EU study demonstrated the figures that I showed you over 15 and 17 years that prostate clearly was of benefit. If you look at what we do in Ireland at the moment, I mean, Richard will be familiar with this, and Alan, opportunistic prostate cancer screening, just attacking patients when they walk into their GP is really a very suboptimal way of approaching prostate cancer screening. It has to be identifying, because like patients who attend me and the rapid access clinics are much more likely to have gone into their GP to have their cholesterol and their blood sugar checked and just happen to have their PSA checked, versus the man out in the community who never goes to the GP, whose father, uncles, and and so on, and grandfather all died of prostate cancer in their 60s or 70s. They're the men that we need to identify. It's much cheaper to treat a man with early prostate cancer than it is to treat a man with advanced prostate cancer with chemotherapy and hormonal therapy and all the new therapies. So it makes a lot more financial sense from a healthcare system to go after early disease, and that's what we can do now. So I think that kind of idea of smart screening, and backed up by the evidence that we have now, is the way forward.
We could have said that for bowel 20 years ago, and yet we don't have bowel cancer screening right across Europe. So I agree with you that it's best to be directed, but there's something wrong fundamentally, because the evidence was there 20 years ago, and yet we didn't deliver it properly on the Europe-wide basis.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Just picking up where you left, David, in relation to how important it is to pick cancer up early. And I guess we all know that one of the major determinants, both of survival and quality of life after survival, is stage at diagnosis. And I think it's great to see so many leaders in Ireland now part of these European programs in relation to pilot screening programs, and then hopefully bringing more screening to Ireland. But I guess the question I would like to ask is in relation to early detection and diagnostics. And one of the focuses as well in the EU programme, the Beating Cancer Plan and EU for Health, is around addressing inequity and ensuring that everybody has equal access to diagnostics. I'm just wondering if anybody in the panel can say if these programs beyond screening, picking up very early stage cancers or pre-cancers, will these EU initiatives make a difference for patients in Ireland in terms of getting equitable access to diagnostics, either directly through EU funding or learning about initiatives in other countries that have worked?
I'll answer that question for you. Of course they will. Anything will be better than what we've got at the moment. I mean, I think one of the big challenges is that we have to try and put an equitable cancer program with an equitable research base in across the country. And, if somebody is living in rural Donegal compared to somebody who's living in Ballsbridge, their access to everything is going to be vastly different. And I experience that all the time. But by doing what we're doing, that's what's so amazing about today, and what Donal is doing and what Liam is doing, and trying to build something that's really important. We can even see that the people of Cork now are getting access to thermography, my God. No, but it's a big challenge for us. And one of the big things, just to go back on Professor Higgins' point, I think, the biggest thing we have around this is it can be somebody else's responsibility to do it. But how we put a steering group together that involves organisations like from the philanthropic sector of the Irish Cancer Society, and run it through the NCCP with proper access to the Department of Health and to the HRB, and integrate all this under a cancer banner where researchers, can be functional in clinics right across the country, and where people can get access to clinical trials. And it's a big job of work, but I think by putting our heads around it, we can make it happen. But I don't know if anybody else wants to come in on that.
Just very quickly, so one of the main aims of, say, Kerin is the fact that it's a network. So it's not going to be standalone institutions, it's not going to be standalone infrastructure. It is a network which will hopefully, and this is what we're looking to deliver on, it will bring that expertise to people who maybe don't have the access, as Professor Kerin points out, who maybe are either more rural or who just don't have that sense of access to healthcare. So that network is going to be there to make sure that everyone has access to that expertise.
It's really great to hear about all these pilots that are coming in, and certainly in Cork we'd love to participate in any that are expanding. It's one thing bringing in the money, and then the next step is to enable the projects. And we had a little chat about that earlier, but I think we need to be quick and efficient at getting these projects up and running. The sooner we get them open, the sooner we accrue patients, the larger our accrual numbers are, the better we look at the European level. And there are just huge issues in that regard nationally, because we're working across so many systems that don't talk to each other, between HSE hospitals, voluntary hospitals, private hospitals, then the universities and all the other layers. So enabling that level or that layer is so critical, and I hope that it's driven over the coming years.
But just to expand on that a little, I think one of the questions for us is, how do we put a structured approach in place such that we have academic clinicians, academic nurses, academic scientists, whatever, working so that they have a foot in the camps of both the universities and the clinical institutes. And I think that's something that we need to do, because you can see that there's vast disparities, across the board. Like medical oncology is a very good example right now. What's happened in the last few years is tremendous, and that we now have a layer of really great people working as academic clinicians in medical oncology, more so in different parts, depending which institutions and so on. But like, that was not the case for a very long time. John Kennedy, I remember, was on his own there for at least 6 months, John, weren't you? Sorry, any other final point?
Could I just make a point about Averil's question earlier? It's about the health inequalities aspect of the Commission's funding, and health inequalities is a key and kind of overarching strand for EU for Health, and it funds. There's the flagship under the Europe-Sweden Cancer Plan is called the Health Inequalities Registry, and the NCCP is signed up to this. So I mean, it's all about capturing data and seeing how we are doing, relative to other EU countries. And I mean, there was just a country profile done in 2023 by the OECD to compare us on, across the board on all the different aspects of cancer care, detection. So I think this is really important to have that data then to identify where the gaps are, the trends, the disparities are across with Ireland and other European countries, to see how we can improve relative to those.
Yeah.
So I think that's just important.
Josephine, and then we'll wrap. Sorry, Liam's going to kill me.
Sorry, I'm just going to maybe just suggest another lens. We should have a sustainability lens. Our healthcare resources finite, our people are finite, our acute care systems are finite. So anything that looks at prevention, early detection, reduces the burden on that system. Anything that moves care out into the community, into cancer support houses, that can access primary care resources. So if we put a sustainability lens on all that we do, and look at how we can address cancer in that broadest context, I think that we could possibly access more EU funding in that context as well. But to look at, and the HRB, the Clinical Academic Career Frameworks, if we could implement that, that would be another way of maybe linking more. If we can link more, reduce burden on the acute care system, and look at reducing the number of patients accessing that acute care system, then be it for survivorship or for early detection, that should be the lens which we should approach care. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our panel. I think it's great to see such distinguished leaders involved in these EU projects, bringing that expertise back to Ireland and bringing your expertise to our European partners. And hopefully through all of that work, we will see a real tangible difference for patients and for people affected by cancer through this EU programme. Thank you.
So I just want to make a quick announcement. Unfortunately, I'm like a horrible person at breaking up conversations outside, but unfortunately, that's the way it is. But what I would like people to do is have a very quick lunch, and please be back here at 1:15 sharp, because we have Minister Stephen Donnelly here to give a keynote address. So I would really appreciate people start filtering in. Quick lunch. We're going to have a networking thing at the end anyway. Can I get everybody into their seats? We're going to start very soon because the Minister has to get back to Leinster House. Okay. Please, everybody be seated, ASAP. Okay. So first of all, just a very brief introduction. Hello? Shh. Okay, so thanks very much. So the Minister is under very significant time pressure, so I really appreciate him coming today. I'm delighted as a UCD person, an ex-UCD graduate, who also went to MIT and Harvard School of Government. So again, I won't go into your bio sketch in the interest of time, but thanks very much, Minister for Health. Stephen Donnelly, thanks.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. Can I start by congratulating the All-Ireland Cancer Research Institute and the National Cancer Control Programme and everyone else who's been involved, the department, the EORB, and everyone. How are you? Good to see you. And everyone else who's been involved in pulling today together and setting up the Mission Hub. I want to acknowledge the organisers for today. I didn't get here in time for lunch, unfortunately. I got squeezed between cabinet and needing to sit in beside the Taoiseach very shortly for leaders' questions. But my thanks to several people, to Dr. Amanda Drury, to Professors Rishtard O'Leada, Donald Brennan, Liam Gallagher, Mark Lawler, to Dr. Rosemary Gannon, and my thanks today to the other speakers. I took a look through the programme and it really does look like a very energising, very interesting day that you have between the panels and the speakers. It's great to see. It's a very exciting time. We are kind of cautious using words like exciting when we are talking about cancer for all of the obvious reasons. But in terms of the research, this is really a very exciting time. We've got the cancer missions running alongside the EU's Beating Cancer strategy, and Commissioner Stella Kyriakides, of course, a breast cancer survivor herself, was really keen that in her time that the EU would begin to champion cancer research, cancer prevention, cancer treatment. And it really is great to see. I think these initiatives running side by side are going to bring cancer research in Europe to a whole new level. And we were just talking outside about how we can best leverage. There's a multi-billion euro pot of EU funding available, something, in fact, Dr. Holan and I have talked about on many occasions. And one of the things that Tony had said to me repeatedly is we must position Ireland to pull in as much of this money as possible, both for teams on the island and, of course, international collaboration as well. And it's really great to see that this is happening now. The EU Mission on Cancer, as you all know, of course, it was set up with the aim of bringing research and clinical practice together, something that we see as self-evident but doesn't always happen. Unfortunately, sometimes our practitioners and our researchers are not always working hand in glove, and I think that's one of the real aims of the EU mission. It's fantastic to see. We know it'll promote collaboration, we know it'll promote domestic and international collaboration, and provide this bridge between research and between policy as well, because we need more of that within the department. We need to be totally open to all of the learnings that you all are going to bring in terms of how we should adjust the national cancer strategy and how we should innovate in terms of policy here as well. My officials are progressing work on the wider policy context that complements all of this. One of the core pieces of this, obviously, is the National Cancer Registry, which is helping us to better understand what's going on. And since its foundation, we've had annual reports on cancer incidence, we've had annual reports on the epidemiology, we've had extensive work right across our entire hospital system. And I want to really just acknowledge the work of the registry, of Deirdre Murray, the CEO, and her team in managing this and bringing this together. Now, as you all know, as anyone involved in clinical trials or anyone who is frustrated because they can't get involved in clinical trials in Ireland knows, we don't need a national cancer registry. We need a national patient registry for rare diseases, for cancer, for everything else, for the chronic disease management as well. I'm bringing forward the health information bill soon. Murish has been put under ongoing pressure, Tony, in terms of us getting that to cabinet very quickly. But we have to have the unique patient identifiers. It defies understanding how we can have unique PRSI numbers and mobile phones and God knows what other things we have, and yet somehow we haven't been able to get a unique health identifier. Well, that is now being sorted, and it's going to be put on a statutory footing quite soon. Since COVID, I think the registry has been very important as well in understanding what happened during COVID in terms of delayed diagnosis, delayed treatment, delayed care, and really making sure that we know what happened in terms of the cost of COVID for cancer patients and how we can make sure that the gap can be closed to the greatest extent possible. I know the registry is going to be a very important partner in the EU Mission Hub. And I know you're actively working on essentially making your work more accessible to the researchers so it can be disseminated and it can be integrated more readily. The registry is also involved in benchmarking partnerships across Europe and further afield. And I think it's going to be really important to show how we compare. And that's one of the things the registry will do. How are we comparing to the very best in the world? Because obviously our ambition must be to be one of the highest performing countries on earth in terms of cancer patients, prevention, detection, treatment, survival rates, and so forth. Our ambition must be absolutely world class. The National Cancer Strategy obviously is key to an awful lot of this, led by Richard and led by the great team in the NCCP. It promotes a culture where the positive impact of research is shown, where the impact of research on patient care is appreciated, understood, valued, and supported. And to this end, to help nurture this culture, the NCCP has established the National Cancer Research Group. And I know the group has been instrumental. We met the lead professor outside in developing the cancer mission here. I want to acknowledge the work of Richard O'Leary and the NCCP in setting this group up and really supporting them in pushing forward. As Minister for Health, one of the things that was a priority to me was that our individual clinicians across the country also have access to research funding. We're talking about collaboration. One of the core elements which I fought hard for in the new consultant contract was annual research funding for every consultant of €20,000. Now, the highest we could find around the world, I think, was Australia, and they were at about €8,000. So we've gone to €20,000. So it's €20,000 every year for every consultant on the new consultant contract, with very, very broad discretion for the consultants as to how they use that, be it clinical trial, things they want to do, innovations they want to do locally with their own patients in their own hospitals, international collaborations they want to have. They can pool their funding. So oncology teams can come together with radiology teams and whatever it may be to really create substantial, important pots of guaranteed annual funding so they can begin to make multi-annual commitments around local or international research collaborations that they want to bring together. So prevention and early detection obviously is what we want to major on as well as treatment. And I think the mission's aim of promotion on prevention and early detection is critical. Obviously, it's closely aligned with our own strategy, the National Cancer Control Strategy. As we know, and as you all know, about 30% to 50% of cancers are preventable through lifestyle, through environmental factors. It's a vast number. That 3 to 5 in every 10 cancer patients with world-class prevention, if we can get all of this right, that 3 to 5 cancer patients in the future may never have cancer, or certainly may never have that cancer that they took on. And we're putting a huge focus on this. So what are we doing? We're raising awareness through various initiatives, the National Skin Cancer Prevention Plan, and you'll be aware of measures we've brought in terms of tobacco. We've brought in alcohol controls, which the EU, many member states were a little grumbly about, but the EU, to its credit, took it on and is now defending the various international challenges that are coming to that. I'll be legislating, in fact we're in the middle of the legislation, we're at committee stage on vapes for minors. We're pushing forward on that. And then I have a second bill on vaping that we're getting ready in the department around point of sale and packaging and flavours and all of these things as well. One of the real successes for Ireland, and we are recognised as such around the world in the oncology community, is our national screening programmes. Our bowel screening programme, our breast screening programme, our cervical screening programme, absolutely world class. And the level of take-up, the level of prevention, the level of diagnosis in Ireland, as you all know, is studied around the world. And in terms of the impacts of those programmes, we are the envy of much of the world. And for those of you here today who are involved in those programmes, I just want to recognise the enormous work, the enormous benefit, and the many, many lives that have been saved through everything that you do. The National Screening Advisory Committee is closely watching international evidence. We're looking at screening for other tumour types, for lung, prostate. We're also looking at the ages at which screening starts and which screening stops to make sure that we are providing the greatest benefit to as many people across the country as possible. The NCCP, of course, is working very closely with GPs, with pharmacists, with other healthcare providers to promote knowledge of cancer symptoms so that all of us can spot when something is amiss. And it can be very simple. A very good friend of mine recently had a neck cancer, and he was running, and his running time was down, and he said he felt unusually tired. There was no lump, there was no other symptom, but he knew from something he'd heard, one of you people say maybe, he knew that wasn't right. He went to his GP, and sure enough, there was a lump there. He had very difficult treatment, and he's in full remission. So that kind of awareness, I think, is essential. And of course, our GPs, our public health consultants, our public health workforce, our pharmacists can continue to push that as well. At the beginning of the cancer pathway, obviously, we have the rapid access clinics. Now, these were established in the designated cancer centres for breast, lung, and prostate. The clinics have the aim of seeing patients within 10 days. The compliance rates are high, and to the great credit of all of those working in those rapid access clinics, the referral rate and the time to see the patient remain very, very high right through the worst damage that COVID was doing. And I think the people who worked in and work in those rapid access clinics really deserve huge credit for keeping that service, that urgent referral service, going as well as they did. This year already, the clinics have seen more than 30,000 people. It's phenomenal, phenomenal service. A fundamental part, obviously, of detecting early cancer, or cancer early, is the risk factors for each patient. And we're moving into this mind-boggling world of personalized medicine and individual genome sequencing, which is opening up extraordinary possibilities. The expansion of cancer genetics is a priority. We funded for this year the first genetics and genomics strategy, and Dr. Colm Henry and I are in fairly regular discussions about how we can further enhance and increase Ireland's capacity. There's a model of care now for hereditary cancers is being developed. It's going to help us identify patients who are higher risk. It's going to help us tailor individualized treatments, which will be more effective patient by patient. We're looking at BRCA1, BRCA2 genes, obviously, and others as well, so that we can identify on a person-by-person level those who are highest risk and make sure that they get care appropriate to that high risk. I want to talk a little bit about equality. I was in New York last week at the United Nations, and I met with some fantastic medics over there, and they quite rightly extolled the virtues of the American Healthcare Service, or the acute service in New York at a minimum. And some of the things they were saying in terms of the advanced treatments were mind-blowing. Until we got on to the question of, well, what about everybody else? And the answer for everybody else was not remotely as positive. It's a fantastic service if you can afford it. And that is absolutely contrary to the entire foundation of our republic. our republic is founded on some very important ideas. And one of those, one of the most important to me in the 1916 proclamation, is our commitment that every child of the republic is treated equally. And that is fundamental to everything that we do in cancer care in our country. The entire National Cancer Strategy is built around every man, every woman, every child being able to access world-class care. It cannot matter in any way how much money you earn or how much money a child's parents have. A publicly delivered world-class service for everybody is what we are committed to. We've had good progress in the rollout of the strategy. Over budgets 21 and 22, we allocated €40 million. It's allowed for some fantastic new services, including in treatment, prevention, psycho-oncology, and more. There's a lot of new people working in cancer services, and there are roles that are being filled right across the country on a weekly basis to grow those services in line with the agreed strategy. We will continue to support the oncology services in every way we can next year, though due to the overruns this year, they are of such a quantum that it is going to be a very, very tight health budget in terms of new developments. But there's a lot of extra money has gone in. There's still scope to continue to develop these services, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, of course, today is about research and collaboration between research and practice. And research needs to be absolutely entwined in everything we're doing in terms of the rollout and the application of our cancer strategies, particularly when it comes to our populations who are not seeing improved outcomes. And unfortunately, as we know, we have evidence that shows that people from marginalised backgrounds are diagnosed later. We know that some of them then have challenges accessing healthcare due to some of the financial burdens involved. Now, a core ask of the National Cancer Society of Ireland for many years has been the abolition of hospital fees. And I was delighted that last year we were able to abolish them for children, and earlier this year we abolished them completely for adults as well. It was very expensive. It was tens of millions of euro, Averil. But it was really important, and I want to acknowledge that that was in no small part to the tireless advocacy of the National Cancer Society of Ireland and their demands to remove these financial barriers, particularly for people who are more marginalised, and particularly, as we all know, when anyone is going through cancer services, they're in a very, very vulnerable state. They can be in a very financially vulnerable state, more so than they would have been when they were healthy. And it was great to be able to do something material for patients in terms of being able to afford the services that they need. So we have an early diagnosis of cancer plan, which is reaching out to at-risk communities. We need to keep working on that in terms of education, engagement, going to where at-risk communities are, just like we're doing with the vaccine program this year as well, meeting people where they are rather than expecting everybody to come in and meet us where we are. And it includes young people. So we have evidence as well. We know about marginalised communities who might be financially marginalised, they might be socially marginalised, they might have language barriers. There's less talk about, we have evidence of gaps for young people as well in terms of accessing services. And one of the things our early diagnosis plan is going to be doing is engaging with young women and men on their health and early diagnosis and access for them, which I think is going to be hugely important. The impact of all of your work over many years, of course, is that Ireland has a remarkably positive story to tell in terms of detection, treatment, and survivorship. We now have more than 200,000 people in Ireland living with and beyond a diagnosis of cancer. We've seen a dramatic improvement in the 5-year survivorship rates over the last 10 years, over the last 20 years. Now, we all intend to go further. That's why we're all here today, is to keep working on this. And there's a great focus in the EU Mission Hub and in the National Cancer Strategy and through the National Cancer Control Programme on survivorship, psycho-oncology, living beyond cancer, and not just stopping services and supports for people when they've gone through active treatment. It's core to everything we're doing, and I just want to recognise there is a community-based network of cancer support teams, some of them in my own county of Wicklow, but right across the country, who do extraordinary work every single day with patients, with families. They do the most human, decent, comforting, supportive work. Some of it technical in how you navigate our services. Some of it as simple as driving people to and from treatment, group therapies, counselling. And I just want to acknowledge the work that they do is invaluable. And I want to thank those of you in the room who are involved in that. I know that some of you here are. We also need to make sure that the patient voice is heard. I think it's one of the big cultural changes in healthcare in Ireland, one of the really good things that is happening. Yes, we need to arm our clinicians to the teeth and our scientists to the teeth in terms of research and development and treatment, but we must always make sure we are listening to the patient and make sure that the patient's voice is central to their care and central to how we engage with them. And the Cancer Patient Advisory Committee is central to that work within the department in making sure that whilst we are led by the evidence and we are led by the science, we are also led by the patient. I'm going to finish up with just a note of optimism. So Stella Kyriakides, the commissioner, was over here, I think it was earlier on this year. Time in my job sometimes can be hard to keep track sometimes. But Stella came over and she was really interested to see some of the cancer services we have. So we brought her to St. James's, and both she and I were introduced to the CAR T-cell therapy. I didn't know anything about it. Now, I'm an engineer by background, so I'm kind of curious as to the tech. And Stella was very curious as someone who's a real advocate for cancer services. And what the oncologists and the scientists told us just blew our minds. Now, to those of you who actually understand this stuff, I apologize. I'm giving an engineer's view of the world, right? We're simple creatures, okay? But essentially what they said to me was, look, for now it's cancers of the blood. And for now, it is people who essentially all the traditional treatments have expired, and the only thing left they would say to people is you gotta get your affairs in order. And we take out some of your cells and we send them to Germany and we recode them in some very fancy way, and then we put them back into you, and then they recode your entire system in some even fancier way that allows the cells to, and the antibodies to find the cancer cells and to break them down, and we keep them in isolation for a bunch of weeks. And we have a 40% remission rate. And so Stella and I were introduced to a father with 3 young kids who I think this was in February or March. And in November, so it might be the previous year, he was told, there's nothing more we can do for you. But in that week in James's, they had introduced the CAR T-cell therapy. And they said, actually, we have this new thing that might be of some use to you. And he was going to play 18 holes of golf after he met Stella and myself. Now, that in and of itself is mind-blowing. But as a curious UCD engineer, I said, so what happens next? And they said, well, here's where we think this is going. They said there's research going on all over the world. Some of you in the room may be involved in collaborations to move from cancers of the blood to solid tumours. And we're figuring out how we can make this work for solid tumours. And that 40% is going to go up and up. And this will become not a treatment of last resort. It'll get cheaper and cheaper as it scales up. And it will become not a treatment of last resort, but in time a treatment of first resort. And he was saying, we'll store pints of healthy blood, and if a lump is detected or whatever it might be, that's what they're trying to achieve. That, they'll take our cell, our blood, and they'll recode it in some fancy way, and it'll come back in, and our immune systems will be coded to actually break down the solid tumours. That is mind-blowing. I don't know how long it's going to take, and I pray to God that they're successful. But it was a mind-blowing moment in terms of what you are all working to achieve, and the power of research and science and medicine and technology all coming together to suggest an extraordinary future where more and more cancers of the blood and solid tumours can be detected early and can be essentially killed by our own enhanced immune systems. It is extraordinary. And I know that's just one example. I know there's a multitude of things that are being worked on by people in this room in terms of new enhanced technology. So with that in mind, can I just say you will have my full support. You will have this government's full support. We are entering a truly exciting phase of medicine and science when we're able to do things like this. So can I just wish you all the best of luck. Those of you working on prevention and early detection, those of you working on treatment, those of you working on supporting patients and families to live the best lives they can lead with cancer or after cancer. The work you do is so valuable. It cannot be overstated in terms of how important it is to our society. So thank you for everything that you have done heretofore. Thank you for everything that you are doing. And can I wish you the very best. You'll have my full support in pulling down as much loot from the EU as possible. I met Stella at an EU health ministers meeting about 6 months later. And she said she was going around different countries saying, wait till I tell you what they have in Ireland, right? So our ambition must be to be amongst the very best nations in the world on behalf of our patients and on behalf of everyone who's living in our republic. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the invite today. And can I wish you all the very best of luck in the future. Gur Magwith.
Could I ask our session 3 panel to make it up to these lovely seats here with accompanying water, sparkling and still? So on behalf of myself and Aidan, a very warm welcome to session 3. This is entitled The Lived Experience at the Heart of National and European Cancer Initiatives, and I think it was very heartening to hear our Minister speak about the fact that the patient voice is so incredibly important. He used that statistic of 200,000 people living with cancer in Ireland, and that equates to 3 lots of Croke Park being packed. So I think visually, if you think of it that way, there's an incredible voice that needs to be heard and brought to the table. So my name is Amanda McCann. I'm a cancer researcher. I have a specific interest in triple-negative breast cancer. I also chair the Patient Voice in Cancer Research Initiative, which started in 2016. Very proud of that, where we are seamlessly bringing patients and researchers and carers together to have discussions around research throughout the entire journey of research. I'm very happy to have my wonderful co-chair here, Aidan McCormick, who is going to introduce himself and share with us his incredible expertise. And then he will introduce our panel and then also will acknowledge the fact that Roberta was unable to join us, but will detail her bio briefly as well. So Aidan, I'll pass on to you.
Okay, good afternoon everybody. I was just in there, and 3 weeks ago I was with Anna, and I used to be a teacher, never used the mic. Hello, sorry. 3 weeks ago I was in London with Anna and Jacqueline, and I left my bag there, and they took it to Galway and then back to Dublin today. So I had my photograph taken, that was the northern input there, and the bag was gone again, and of course Anna and Jacqueline had picked up the bag yet again. So it is so like home. So, right, well, look, good afternoon. My name is Aidan McCormick. I'm chair of the Northern Ireland Cancer Research Consumer Forum, but I'm also a part of the AICRI steering committee. It's like it is for me, it's a privilege to be here today, and it's a wonderful experience for me. It really is. In real life, I'm retired, and I'm a patient advocate. I am a blood cancer patient, and I was holding on to every word the minister said there, as you could well imagine. So I have been this is coming into year 13. Not always the best numbers there, but it is what it is. And I continue to do my work, being a patient advocate, like my good friend in AICRI, Tom Hope. So it's important that I mentioned that there, and AICRI gave us every opportunity to be part of what's going on. That's how I got to Leinster House. The very pleased to welcome our panel today. It's a pity about Roberta. Roberta is ill and couldn't make it today. Otherwise, she would have. And it means that we are a very lean, slick panel here today, just along here. At the minute, I'm just going for all the names. Thank you. We have Alan Pearson. Alan is, all these people I know are probably known to you, but some are new to me. Alan Pearson, the parent of a child who passed away after 6 years of treatment for relapse refractory neuroblastoma. He's an active member of the Irish and European Parents Network. He is an experienced biopharmaceutical professional. I hope I got all that out in one go. So you're very welcome, Alan. Secondly is Yvonne, who's by my side here, Yvonne O'Mara. Now, I'm really going to get my tongue around this. She's a systemic psychotherapist and psychosocial oncologist. She has expertise in supporting and promoting patient-led research. Yvonne's special interests are anticipatory grief, bereavement, and psychosexual dysfunction post-cancer. The third member over there is my friend, Jacqueline Daly, who has looked after me. A former cancer patient and co-founder of the East Galway and Midlands Cancer Support, as well as the Director of Services. A patient advocate and campaigner dedicated to raising awareness and lobbying for change within local and national government agencies, actively participates as a member of the, well, we call it PPI, the Public and Patient Involvement Group of the Irish Society of Gynecological Oncology. She maintains her membership with Cancer Patients Europe and holds the position of Vice Chair. And of course, Roberta, she follows really in Pat Fahy, yes. Isn't that who was the instigator of the Lynch syndrome organisation in Ireland. And he did tremendous work there, and Roberta continues to do that work. And, you know, we're missing her today, and I hope she gets well. So that's everyone. I hope I did you proud. Now, on to the questions.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so we had a couple of questions that we were very keen to hear from our panel, what they thought. And the first question was, what has been your experience of participating in European networks? And I think we might start with Jacqueline.
Thank you, and hello everybody. I suppose my involvement when I got involved in Europe first was that we're all the same. People who've had cancer all over the world want things better. From then grew a passion for research, and research is absolutely key. So Francis Drummond was the first one that knocked on my door, and after that Donald Brennan lit a fire under me that is just so important for research. Again, we do a lot of work with Yvonne and Sharon, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. We all need the same things. We all need to work together. We need to make it better for those that are coming afterwards, and research is definitely the key to the whole lot.
Wonderful, Jacqueline. Thank you. I hope Donald wasn't lighting fires when he was doing his PhD, but anyway, that's another discussion. Any other? Yes, Aidan, you were going to?
In terms of European networks, I think, you know, I sit on one end of the spectrum in terms of childhood cancer. It's sort of over there in the corner in a lot of our discussions and not brought to the front an awful lot. And it's no different across Europe. I think one of the things that we're starting to see change in Europe is the more involvement of advocates like in scenarios like this. But it's still, someone used the word earlier on, fragmented in terms of research and budgeting. Like the infrastructure for childhood cancer around Europe is very fragmented, but it's starting to pull together. So what I'm seeing in Europe is more of a reorganization, I think, around childhood cancer anyway.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I also just say, in the north, in my own group, the Cancer Research Forum, within the past 3 months, there's 2 parents of children who have currently childhood cancers, and 4 others who have head and neck cancers are coming to the forum. So there's this, what would you call it? There's this move for other cancers to come in, and I don't say that with disrespect, but there's a fair number of our members would have breast cancer or would have prostate cancer, and there's a tremendous amount of work going on in those areas. But it just shows there is this change, so it's good to see it, and thank you for the work that you do on that.
No problem. And thank you for the comment. But I think what's interesting is someone mentioned, I think it was Amanda this morning, said the important thing is to bring the quietest people into the room, into the voice, and there isn't people quieter than a bunch of children in an oncology ward. So if their voices aren't involved, then you're missing a huge potential to help. And I think, like that example, there's more and more organisations bringing that voice in, and particularly there's starting to be a bit more cross-border discussion as well. So, for example, we work with through Childhood Cancer Ireland, we're starting to work with some charities in the UK, and that's helping us have a bigger voice in the discussions with pan-national organisations.
So I think Yvonne has a very nice example that she's going to share with us. Excellent, thank you very much.
So firstly, thanks to AICRI and the NCCP for having me here today, and thank you, Aidan, for that lovely introduction. I suppose I've long known that the patient voice is paramount to any change within a healthcare system, not only from a molecular level, but also from a service provision level. And I'm now in a position, fortunately, thanks to the Irish Cancer Society and the Women's Health Initiative, to be able to really implement that patient voice in a research way. And this is a really simple example of how this is currently being rolled out in all hospitals across Ireland, and that includes Northern Ireland. We have a very cohesive group working with our gynae oncologists in Northern Ireland. But this came through a discussion. Lots of you work at the front force of the healthcare service, where you find patients, it's new, this language of stage, grade, histology is something that goes over their head. And the idea is, from my perspective, was to how can we support our patients, because a more educated patient is a more empowered patient, and that's what we really want in our healthcare service. And when I was running one of these focus groups on implementing a little card, one of the ladies said, well, my surgeon drew out my anatomy for her cervical cancer diagnosis, was Kim Hanley, and she said, I still refer to that today because it helps me understand where this journey started, where this all began. So I ran with this, spoke with Donal, and we decided that we would roll it out for all of the 5 gynecological cancers, but also so that this was rolled out in the height of COVID, where there was only one person allowed in a room. When I went to evaluate it 6 months later, I got people when they were in their cars. I'm not sure about what that was, but there was often their significant other alongside them, and the appreciation of having something like this being brought home. So a copy is given to the patient, but a copy is also kept in the chart. I brought this to the European Society of Gynecological Oncology, ESGO, and they voted it the 2023 Project of the Year. And this is now going to be rolled out in many different languages right across Europe in all ESGO accredited hospitals. And this is because of a patient speaking to somebody who's in a position to implement this research. So it's a really lovely example of patient-led research.
Oh, absolutely fantastic to see it patient-led, and that it's so informative then for other patients. And I believe you're going to have this for breast cancer as well.
Yes, I suppose I see this as a quick win. This is not expensive research, but it means so much to the quality of life of patients. And any of you who have parents in their 80s, if they came home with something like this after a newly diagnosis of any disease, it doesn't have to be cancer. I know we're in the realm of cancer. You know what that means to the wider family system. And so this is inexpensive. I'm delighted to hear Stephen Donnelly say that there's 20, €1,000 goes an awful lot away for any disease site in something like this. So yes, breast is the next one, which will be rolled out across Ireland, and the world is our oyster.
No, I was delighted to hear about the 20,000 for each consultant. That definitely rang a bell with me as well. So.
My money.
Okay, thank you. How can patient advocates get involved in EU-funded cancer projects? And I think that's over to Alan. Could you pass a comment on that, please?
I guess that's one of the big challenges, is how do we help, get involved in funding applications, those kind of things. I mentioned at tea to someone. It'd be great if there was like a process map of where we can jump in and help, right? Because we don't, we're trying to assemble our own networks, but for this stage of funding in terms of research and development, that's kind of your world where we're trying to help you guys, okay? So it's through inviting us in, like this, and thanks to Liam and the AICRI group, they've been good enough to involve us in several meetings. But that's how we get involved, is through supporting you guys and providing that information. And sometimes that information is very simple in terms of what do patients want out of research? What do they want it to look like in the future, in terms of, for the people coming after us, in my case for the families coming after us, what are the considerations we give to what's valuable research? Because sometimes it's not always the same as what you guys think are valuable research. So that's I think how we get involved.
Thank you. What Aidan was talking about a couple of weeks ago, we were involved in a programme in England, and I have to say it was the best learning experience of my life. So we had researchers, professors give us lectures every morning. In the afternoon we were in the labs, actually working in labs. We saw a pathologist working through a breast cancer, like stuff that no way is a patient ever going to see that. It was absolutely fantastic. It gave me a completely different level of understanding of what goes on and the importance of research. And I think if we had something like that here, that we can empower advocates. It's all very well saying, have advocates there, have them there. We don't want to be ticking a box. We don't want to be there for lip service. We actually want to be active. We want to be part of it. Nothing about us without us. So if we could have something like that here, it would be absolutely invaluable. A simple thing we got was a couple of pages with words that half of them I wouldn't even pronounce, but explanations beside it. You go into the doctor a lot of the time and he is talking a completely different language. You need to dumb it down for the rest of us. We need to be able to understand what you're saying. And if we had a program like this where we can actually educate advocates, and not every advocate wants that, but if those of us that do can have it, it would be absolutely invaluable. Another simple thing we learned is how to read a research paper, how to actually make some sense of it. I've got involved in stuff, and I'm telling you, I've gone 3 times over it, and it didn't even seem like English at the end of it. But we need to have that and take it down to a level that we can actually understand it, because most of us are not academics.
Can I do that course as well?
Sorry, you made a good point. We're not there to tick a box, right? We're there because we want a better outcome. And I have been engaged in providing information and perspectives for research grants, and I never even know whether the grant got approved or not. So you guys absolutely, like patient advocates, want to help, right? But you have a duty of respect to the people that can get involved in that, to close that circle at the end. Because I could pull out a number of commitments we made to support people, and I don't even know whether those projects happened.
I just had a comment. I was with Jacqueline in that course, and the experience will follow me probably most of my life. I was growing breast epithelial tissues in a sterile environment, and they were pretty good, I can tell you. I am led to believe by Professor whoever it was, but and we had our white coat and blue gloves on and all of that. But the most poignant place, the most poignant thing, if I go back to the breast tissue, I mean, you could have heard a pin drop when that dissection was made in lab, and how that lady who donated that breast tissue from a radial mastectomy, 24 hours earlier, and donated it to science research, how she was able to make that decision, it is just beyond me. And this is from someone whose mother had breast cancer, and my nephew's married to a reconstructive breast surgeon. Does that all fit together? So, you know, it was one of those things. And I agree, if there was some sort of course of that nature for PPI people and others, I think it would be excellent. Maybe there's an opportunity somewhere here for funding for that type of thing.
Tissue culture is one of the most problematical things for researchers. So if you can grow epithelial cells, well done. There'll be people. Mark.
Jackie and Aidan make a really good point in relation to this. About 5 years ago, we did this with ALMAC, and we brought people into ALMAC, and exactly the same. And one of the things that's really important is it allows you to see what actually does happen. And I think when you can actually see the pathway of a sample coming into a laboratory, what happens to it, what it's used for, it then makes it a lot easier then in relation to understanding what genomics is, etc., rather than the theoretical aspect of it. And the second thing we've done a lot is looking at ways in which we can actually empower patients, not to be tick boxing, I completely agree with you, but actually to be driving programs. So in DataCam, which is the UK's Health Data Research Hub for Cancer, our patients are involved in every discussion we have, whether it's with academic, clinical or commercial, and they also have the power of veto. So I think we need to look at taking this seriously, but certainly I think there's a gem of an idea there of maybe doing an all-island training course, for want of a better word. That's not the right word, but just something like that. And I think we would have the opportunities. And as I said, it was that was about 5 or 6 years ago, and just everybody said that just made the whole thing so much clearer, because you can visualize and then you remember, I was there a month ago and that's what happened. And I think that's really important. So that's maybe something back to us to think about and how we might do it. And maybe Averil might give us a bit of money.
There's also a crucial role for patient advocates in helping researchers speak in plain language and write in plain language, so that the scientific research they're doing is palatable for the general public. So a huge amount of role there for patient advocates. Evelyn.
So I'm particularly taken with Yvonne's presentation and that idea and the concept of patient-led research, and I suppose that's what we're here today to talk about. And it would be remiss not to mention the amazing Siobhan Gaynor and what she's leading in Cancer Trials Ireland. She herself, a lot of us will know her. She inspired me and many here to get involved in clinical trials and to work in clinical trials, because she trained a lot of us in GCP. And worked as a scientist, and then has metastatic breast cancer. And through her experience, she wanted to find out how others feel in her position, because there's actually so many more people living longer with cancer, with metastatic cancer, and we need to learn how to manage that and learn from a patient perspective. So she had a target of 300 responders to a study, which opened in July, and she's nearly made it already. And one of the things, the question I suppose for the panel is, Cancer Trials Ireland and the team within Cancer Trials Ireland and Professor Seamus O'Reilly from Cork are really important members of Siobhan's team in leading that study, and there are staff working on the study as well. It's not something you can do in isolation of support. And I think everybody on the panel will agree with that. And I think but the ideas are something you could really work across Europe on I mean, there are groups all over Europe watching what we're doing with Siobhan at the moment. So there's potential there, I would say, within European programmes to work together. But we do need to give that support. The Irish Cancer Society, you know, and other philanthropic organisations are supporting it now, and the Health Research Board, but you're not philanthropic, although I'm sure it feels like it sometimes. And there are others. So that's a speech and a question.
Thank you, and I'm fortunate to work with Siobhan actually on that metastatic study, yes, and she's a force du jour for sure. I suppose kind of platforming from what Amanda said and having patient-led research, Sharon O'Toole, and I know you're here in the room, I can't see you, but Sharon is the Kevin Bacon of everything to do with gynae-oncology in this country. It all leads back to Sharon, and she's in the corner, which is, yeah, nobody should put baby in the corner. But yeah, so Sharon and I set up in 2016 the Irish Society of Gynecological Oncology's Public and Patient Involvement Group, and that has been absolutely invaluable to us because it has provided us with a pool of patients who are interested in patient-led research. It means that any research that comes to the forefront, they are embedded from the start. They self-select, they choose what they want to get engaged with, they choose what they choose not to. But actually getting involved in public and patient involvement starts with the clinician and the nurse specialist in the healthcare service. And if you say specifically to your patients, so whether it's in your discharge letter or whether it's in person saying, you've a lot to offer, public and patient engagement, please join X, Y, and Z. And there are numerous of them. There's probably too many in this country at this stage now, PPIs, with the Cancer Voice in UCD, ISGO PPI, IPOSI, like there's the Irish Cancer Society have one now, but there's a pool of PPI, and it's how we utilise them, because absolute sheer brilliance can happen when we put it together like that, and it's networking. But we have, and Sharon and I have discussed this at length, we do lack a standardised information and supporting our PPI in some kind of certificate that you've completed, that obviously is not cumbersome for them, but that they're supported. Sharon and I support them if they're put forward to represent a study that's not within our domain, but that we've put a call out. But it's really important that we standardise that training. I know IPOSI go to UPATI in Europe, but we really need to have something in Ireland. So I would be really welcoming of something like that, and I know you would too, Amanda.
So we got a message through from IPOSI just to remind us that they offer a public education programme on genomics, so that leads on very nicely from what you were saying. And in relation to Siobhan Gaynor, an incredible woman, there's not enough being done for patients with metastatic disease. There's not a metastatic register, I believe, or the numbers are not known. So I think what she's doing is absolutely incredible, really, really. Sorry, Mark, yeah.
No, just again in relation to a shared opportunity, Cancer Focus Northern Ireland have just started to fund a secondary breast cancer audit in terms of metastatic disease, so there might be an opportunity there to do an all-Ireland study in that, so just to say that.
Sorry. Are you going to run, Donald?
Hi, thanks, Liam. My name's Sheila Kassan. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I had HER2 positive, diagnosed in 2017. A lot of what we've talked about today really resonates. I became a patient advocate initially, and I realised I had my treatment in Cambridge in the UK. And I realised, having had this life-saving treatment, that when I had my last radiotherapy session, so I had mastectomy, reconstruction, using grafts from my stomach, 14 hours of surgery, 10 days in intensive care, a year's worth of targeted therapies, Herceptin, onto, I can't think what you call it when you get injected in the stomach. We talked about it earlier today, whatever that drug is called, which is pretty awful. And at the end of all of that, I went looking and said, where next? Where do I go to get healed mentally and physically? And of course, the answer is nowhere. Go home and work it out yourself. And I'm not alone in this. This is all cancer patients in the UK and Ireland. We are well supported by charities. We can have a cup of tea, we can have a chat. We might see somebody who can offer one session of counselling psychology, and then we sort it out, or we don't. And I actually think, from the work I've done in recent years, that it's harder for the men with prostate cancer. You know, the term earlier was used, castration. It was radicalized, it probably in some cases still is. Zoladex, which is given to men with prostate cancer, is really difficult to tolerate for men and women. And so this brought me to looking for some investment. I raised 750,000 initially to build a company of healthcare professionals, allied healthcare, physiotherapists, counselling psychologists, exercise oncologists. My exercise oncologist is actually joining me tomorrow here. He's coming over from South Carolina University. And we are now in the absolute privileged position to be able to support cancer patients across the UK, and we're going into Germany. We would very much like an introduction into the Irish cancer patients and to be able to support them in any way we can. We have seen a 78% reduction in clinical depression, and we've seen people return to full movement. They have 12 weeks of health coaching and lots of physiotherapy. And it feels to me that anyone who goes through cancer should have physiotherapy, counselling psychology, dietary advice, and sexual health advice to be able to retain their life. We know cancer patients live for a long time, and I think we are failing them. Not here in the UK, across Europe, and I really hope that changes.
Can I answer that, please? What you've done is absolutely fantastic. The support centre that we run started around my kitchen table when my husband was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and that was the hardest thing in our marriage. It absolutely nearly destroyed us. And there isn't enough done by a long shot. But what we do at our centre is we do clinical need when it comes to counselling. And we have some people might be fine. We never actually put a limit on it. We're not funded. Everything is done. There's 2 of us that get a wage out of the centre. I worked for 7 years without getting a wage. We do, like you said, we have a gym, which was a horse stable once upon a time, and we're working with the researcher in Galway to do physical exercise for patients. We also have dietary information. We work with the men with prostate cancer. We now have a new chair in for pelvic floor exercises. So we are all the time doing it. Like that, we're not funded for that. And we don't put limits on what we give to the patients, because we both know that's not how it works.
In relation to that, the Irish Association for Cancer Research, our annual meeting, they have a fantastic parallel session now for allied healthcare professional research. So it's very much that we're aware of multidisciplinary approaches in psycho-oncology and physio. So now look, we've got 10 minutes left, and we have...
Sorry, Amanda, can I ask a question?
Where's that coming from?
Over here.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
I'm hiding behind
sorry,
the...
you were there.
But you made me run across here.
Sorry, Donald.
Just
please.
one question. I have 2 kind of, I suppose, worries, and Yvonne knows this very well. The first is to the panel maybe, how do we make sure that the silent majority are heard? Because the way the PPI works is that we attract in usually people with a very similar personality to our own, and as Yvonne said, there's a selection bias that happens all the time. I would refer a huge number of patients, as with my colleagues, to Yvonne and Sharon for the ISGO PPI, but I definitely select them because I know the ones that are going to be, I suppose, interested in it. But they may be in a stage in their lives, just often these patients are in a hugely traumatic phase in their life, and we may be missing out on some hugely important people in that pool. And the second thing then is, we have to be very careful about advocacy fatigue, and how do we make sure that we don't develop professional advocates who are almost clones of the researchers and the doctors who have selected them and don't give you the kind of answers that you really need, which is when I ask for an advocate's opinion, I want to know, how bad do you feel on a Wednesday morning when you've dropped your kids to school? not when you come in to see me and you have you're on your best behaviour. And Yvonne and I are in the middle of a big CR UK application at the moment, but we've had a number of professional advocates from the US try to join us. 2 of them are 25-year pancreatic survivors from stage 3, 4 pancreatic cancer. Like, these people have a completely different view of what healthcare is. So they're my 2 questions. One is the silent majority, and the second is avoiding advocacy fatigue.
I'll just talk about the second part, the fatigue, and how do you keep people, you know, you need a sort of a fresh supply, because even in terms of my advocacy, like, my daughter passed away 2 years ago, her treatment started 8 years ago, treatment has changed, conditions have changed. One of the issues we have with getting people to come and advocate is that, and I'm talking specifically about childhood cancer here, is because they're so exhausted after that process, if they've been lucky enough to come out of that process with their child. They're fundamentally broken. They have a family to rebuild, they've careers to rebuild, they've, you know, finances to rebuild. So it's very hard to get people through. And then in terms of, it was very interesting what you said about selection bias. You know, Aidan mentioned, like, I come from a biopharma and research background, so I can have those conversations with people, and maybe that's a selection bias on my behalf, is because I want to get involved in this element of advocacy. I don't do the soft touch stuff. I'm not out there, you know, putting an arm around the shoulder. So, but those people have huge amounts to bring into this team as well. So I don't know, someone mentioned CNSs, okay, so you're a nurse specialist. Now, I think I've mentioned this before, particularly in childhood cancer, CNSs are your contact with people. Like, they're the people who know what families are going through, what patients are going through, and how accessible, for want of a better description, they are to a role in advocacy or to speak on their behalf. So I really think that CNSs are an underutilized connector into the advocacy world.
And if I can add to that, we have a very close working relationship with the oncology unit in Port Youngla, which is nurse-led. One of the nurses is a founding member of the centre with us. And the help and support we get from them, like, when they know that there's a clinic and there's going to be X amount of people who are going to get the worst news of their lives, we can get a call, we can go down there, we can support them, we can bring the person back and do the soft touch and make the cup of tea and make sure that you're okay to get into your car and drive home. But absolutely, I think there needs to be an awful lot more nurse involvement as well in research.
I think, sorry, you go, because you're the, no, you go.
Well, I'm just thinking we might be running out of time a wee bit. We need to go on to the next question, but would that be all right? Or do you want to be a quick point? No? Oh, okay. I never get away with things like that, you know, but... Okay, well, and probably our final question here to the panel, and maybe Yvonne, you could pick this one up to start with. It's do you find a difference in terminology and how patient advocates are referred to in other European countries? For example, patient partners, cancer patients, patients living with and beyond cancer. Well, what's your preferred terminology?
I suppose it's not really mine, it's the patient's, and I think it varies from not only country to country, but county to county. It's very colloquial. I think language is socially constructed within our society. It means different things to different people. But I think if you can get a cohort of patients together and have an agreeable language, I think that is something that's very important. I suppose just one incident in the last week, speaking about those American advocates versus the European advocates. Europeans are moving away from this battle, this war analogy that we have with cancer, and the Americans are very much immersed in it. Now, how do we bridge both of those languages? So for me, it's very, very much patient-led, and how can we find a common denominator that suits all? Like, it used to be PPI, now it's PPIE, you know, patient and public involvement and engagement, in case you isolated anyone with involvement. So you have to kind of put a cap, be realistic about it, but I never see somebody as a patient of mine, I see them as a client. So.
Thank you, Yvonne. Jacqueline?
And I see myself as a former cancer patient.
And a former. Yeah. Thank you, Jacqueline.
I'm not even a patient. That's the thing. I'm a parent advocate, so it's very different. And I hear a lot of, sometimes, it's all about the patient. We represent the patient, but we're not the patient, which is kind of a little side alley to that language.
Yes, I've just 2 words this way, and thank you for that. It just happened to be, I was talking to a lady last night called Mary, and she was coming to join our group, our expanding group, and she was a double cancer patient. She called herself a double cancer patient because she had a cancer of her womb, and that had been dealt with some years ago, but in saying that, she said to me, but there's a lot of damage around the treatment for that. So, I mean, that lady came through difficult times, and she made 2 points to me. She says, there's her and the husband at home now, children are away, and she said she didn't like the word carer. She didn't like the word carer because it inferred an inequality that it didn't exist in their house. And I had never thought about that before, because that's what we tend to use. We tend to use patients and carers, But she threw that in. So that, I don't know how you feel about that there, but if you want to comment on that, I have the other bit she said, that we talk about lived experiences. And I mean, we've all had that, we all do that. And she says, yeah, but it's lived and learned experiences, because you've learned a lot coming through that so-called lived experience. So that was 2 points that she made, and very enthusiastically I might say, so it was the inequality of using the term carer, and the second one, lived and learned experience. Do you want to comment on that, Alan?
Just maybe on the lived experience, it's a term I often find is used to shut down conversation rather than open conversation. I don't know why it's necessary to put lived in front of it, and that may be unpopular, but it is my experience, right? I think that reinforcement of, well, I lived it, you don't know about it. It's like, I lived my experience. I want you to know about it. I don't like that lived experience term.
Yeah. Jacqueline?
Yeah, I think being human beings, we're never going to all agree on any of these terms, and it is like, I don't particularly like the word survivor, but what else are you going to use? So I think, it is hard. But I think the other thing that we need to be very aware of as well is that for a lot of cancer patients, there's hidden disabilities. And one of the biggest ones is incontinence. So there is a whole thing there that we don't talk about and that we don't look at. But there are so many hidden disabilities around cancer and cancer treatments as well.
Just on the word carers, carer has a huge implication for couples in particular. It desexualizes the relationship, and by removing that word carer and going back to partner or significant other or whomever you're in a relationship can ignite your psychosexual connection with that person. So I'm down on the word carer. I don't.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to hand over to Aidan just to give us some parting words and to thank all of you for your contribution. All of these topics could be a full day, couple of days.
Well,
so
it would be for us. Yes, and thank you to the panel for all your answers. Really, it's in the broadest sense, the patient involvement, and whether you call it carer, survivor, or whatever. I have an issue with survivor because I'm not a survivor. I'm living with it, and even that we have difficulty with. So it's very challenging at times. But the role of the non-specialist in there, the patient, the public involvement and engagement, it's just very, very important. We have the advantage that we have the experience of living this, and anyone on the audience who is sat in the consultant's room in that chair listening to the words that are coming, and in fact you're listening but you don't really hear, and on that day, that's one of the most challenging days of your life, whether it's you or whether it's a member of your family circle. It is just awful. In my case, I went out and had 2 bacon rolls and a cup of tea. In your wildest imagination, how did that happen? But that was my response to it. It's just so important. The patient community and their family circle have so much to offer, and they will offer it willingly to help progress a future. Now, it's not always for us. I mean, I don't see myself having a long-term future, but I really feel that there should be a long-term future for those who come ahead of me. So really, as I sit here today, when I speak, I'm speaking on behalf of those who aren't here today. I'm speaking on behalf of those who are on this journey or traveling a pathway, and I'm speaking on behalf of those who have yet to join that journey. And that's so important, because we have expertise. In doing that, you are encouraging us, you are empowering us, and you're giving us confidence, and you're giving us hope. And that is so important from my side. So without really getting emotional here, I want to thank everybody here for their contribution, but I actually want to thank the floor, because from the bottom of my heart, and that includes all our PPI people and Tom out there, and I hope he would join me in the comment. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for all that you are doing, no matter how little it is, whether you are bench-facing or patient-facing, whether you're in the supportive organisations. Francis, for instance, I look in terms of, as my new friend from 6 months ago, was it? For all that you do in your own way, thank you so much, because it is so important for our future. And thank you to AICRI. That's it. Great.
Charge.
I think.
What's your name? Great, thank you very much. Keith, you're great. Oh no, it's your little brother. You better get going.
Matthew. Yeah. He loves chess.
His son used to do the chess club. So very good.
So, can we all settle down now? Professor McCann there. So we're going to move into the next session. I'm Evelyn Mulroe, and I'm the CEO of Cancer Trials Ireland. When I worked in Belfast in university, I used to be a bouncer. I nearly got back into that role, telling everybody to be quiet, but you've all done it now, so that's good. It's been fantastic so far today, and what's wonderful is to hear all the voices from all around the country, north and south, east and west, clinicians, patients, nurses, researchers, all in one room together, and it's all about collaboration. And I think that's what we need to be able to do. And what I said when we got to chat to the Minister quickly, and we were all talking about how great we are to him, we also said we actually need more money if we're going to get all of these grants. So, you know, we have to talk about that. But so I'm co-chairing today with someone. If he stands up here, we might all be brought back to a time when we were sitting at home watching the telly, and that's Dr. Tony Holohan, and it's a real privilege to co-chair today with you. And I also want to say, a lot of us saw you on Friday evening, and not only are you working in a professional capacity, but like many people in this room, have that lived experience of someone with cancer. And I think we all think of Emer, and we all have people like that in our hearts when we're doing our job and trying to do better for patients with cancer. So it's a real privilege to have you here today, and a real privilege to co-chair. So he's let me take the lead, so I'm going to take the lead at the start, and we're going to pass the baton. And I'm really excited to introduce Ebba Hallerenju Hoot, and you can correct me if I'm wrong afterwards. And I'm really excited because you've come over from Sweden, and you're the co-founder and head of the innovation Vision Zero Cancer. And it's a flagship innovation testbed in Sweden for clinical trials and implementation of precision health in cancer. And there's a few of us in the room, Professor Maeve Lowry's here somewhere. We're working very hard on that in Cancer Trials Ireland. So we're going to be listening attentively to you. And what I loved about your collaboration is you've brought everyone together, both patients, academics, industry, everyone in the system. So I'm going to hand over to you. I think you're going to do a little sum up of what you've heard so far and then go into your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, wow, very, very grateful to be here and to have the pleasure of learning from you to see how can we continue collaborating more going forward together. And actually, I'm a proud colleague of Professor William Gallagher and Mark Lawler from the ECOS Consortium, and also with Jasmine Fonseca, who will join us in a moment here on the panel. I have a background in the social sciences, if we talk about implementation science. My mother was working as a nurse. I have a sister who's a radiologist, and our father is undergoing cancer treatment. So I'm sort of within the system, collaborating with the different actors, orchestrating our sort of vision-driven innovation hub, where we have a flagship initiative for clinical trials. Before I start, I just would like to acknowledge a few persons from Sweden in my team. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't actually make this happening. And it's our former National Cancer Coordinator, Professor Dr. Hans Hägglund, working with CAR T-cell treatments today back at Karolinska University Hospital. His successor, Associate Professor Kjell Ivarsson, who is the National Cancer Coordinator, a similar role at the NCCP, and who is also the chair of this initiative, Vision Zero Cancer. And also my dear colleagues from the ECOS Consortium, Eva Jolie, Chief Coordinating Officer of the Karolinska Comprehensive Cancer Center, also a colleague in the CCI for EU project, among others. And also my dear colleague Susanne Håkansson from AstraZeneca. We were part of co-founding this initiative nearly 4 years ago. And last but not least, my dear colleague Dr. Bettina Ryll, who was a member of the first Cancer Mission Board. And that's how we got to know each other. And since then, we're working together with the strategy and developments in Sweden and expanding in Europe. So I just wanted to, before I have this, and I'm stealing some time, but you've stolen at least almost 45 minutes of my time because we're running late in schedule. So I'll take one moment, I'm just joking. So to say that rehabilitation, I think this, I was very touched by the panel, and I just want to say we are also rewriting our national cancer strategy now in Sweden. We created our first strategy about 14 years ago, and then it's been updated by annual control plans. But the focus on rehabilitation and the quality of life aspects in all this, that's the main priority area for this plan now. Talking about mitigating inequity and tying together the prevention, early detection with the rehabilitation services, and a lot of also focus on the transition from youth to adult cancer. So those pathways we see we have a lot to do, in addition to, of course, making sure that we can have groundbreaking technologies available for everybody. So from that, going now then, we're moving towards more of the system level thinking now then on how do we collaborate to make change happen. And I think, coming back also to what your minister said, the future is packed with potential. And I think having the right mix of people, science and policy, we know that we can deliver meaningful changes that improve, extend and save the lives of those diagnosed with cancer. But our common challenge that was also pointed out by Professor Mark Lawler earlier today is how do we connect better research to policy? How can we make sure that all these technological progresses translate into better health outcomes for all? And I believe that missions holds the key to unlock this potential. So, without further ado, I would like us to start with a small introductory video. So while we wait for the... Here we go.
The World Health Organization anticipates that the number of cancers diagnosed in 2030 will be 80% higher than those diagnosed in 2005. The scale of the global cancer control problem demands that we consider new paradigms to accelerate our rate of learning, discovery, and innovation. When most people think about cancer care, They think about a physician or a nurse and a patient. In reality, the healthcare ecosystem is way more complex. To create change in such a system is difficult, as everything depends on nearly everything else. Trying to change one thing in a single place just means the system around it adapts. That's why we consider healthcare a complex adaptive system. That's where missions come into play. Missions are a way to help complex adaptive systems to reorientate themselves towards a better future by providing a North Star, a shared direction to aim for, and that's precisely what Vision Zero does for cancer. More than providing just a vision, we're active in concrete projects that tackle cancer across the full spectrum, from prevention and early detection over treatment to quality of life, rehabilitation and survivorship. And change doesn't happen by itself. So we look into critical enablers such as precision medicine, data and diagnostics, and make sure that diverse actors meet and collaborate. Together, we can create a healthier and more sustainable future for all.
So I think that the only time to prepare for the future is right now. And Vision Zero Cancer was created as a safe space where we actually could dedicate time to thinking and working with the future happening now. So it's a bottom-up initiative created nearly 4 years ago with the National Cancer Coordinator and with academia, industry, patient associations, and we started actually in lung cancer for the same challenges and opportunities that was pointed out earlier today. So we work across different initiatives. We think that zero cancer, in the sense of eliminating cancer as a cause of death, it requires a holistic approach, effective across two axes. On the one hand, we have to see the citizen or patient trajectory, everything, as we said, like prevent the preventable, from primary prevention through early detection with screening to correct diagnosis, effective treatments, follow-up, rehabilitation, survivorships, and so forth. So that's on the one axis that we have to develop initiatives. But to make it really happen, we have to make sure on the other axis then that the research translates to something that's implementable. We have to make sure that our systems can actually receive them. And one way of doing that is, of course, also to make sure that you build a holistic portfolio of initiatives with the different stakeholders who actually are able to move and make that change happen. And also then make sure that you engage with the authorities, we said before here today, and also with payers and regulators, so it's possible actually to implement. So that's what we're trying to do in holistic ways. So not only are we then trying to be part of creating these initiatives where in the healthcare as such, but it's also about developing new models and tools for organizing for better rehabilitation services, for instance. And we're also investing into research in ecosystem development, and we're developing the methodology to build more of a collaborative innovation capacity. So to summarize what we see as mission orchestration in a nutshell, we're trying then to set our overarching vision and principles that we can align around and to bring the stakeholders together. And we also strive to allow, with shared principles, to have more of a dynamic and flexible collaboration across these organizational boundaries. In the center of it all, we have what we call more of a convening function, the safe catalyst, so that we can orchestrate together and understand the different needs of the different stakeholders. It's not just about, I don't know, we don't see, sorry. It's all white in the center, so it's supposed to be written in there, academia, healthcare services, patients. Luckily, I'm looking at my slides at the same time. And so on the fifth pentahelix, and of course, industry as well. So all the stakeholders and the groups beyond them, just as we saw a slide this morning. working together. And then we are run for the first initial 5 years as a partnership and a host organization, which is the Stockholm School of Economics Institute for Research. It's interesting. Okay, so the convening function we think is very important, and that you can also hear it, we said this morning, break down the silos. You have to take at least a national or more of a global hat on. Cancer knows no border, as we know. And we need to see this as also that you invest as actors wanting to change from a social and health perspective in it all. And also we've established governance mechanisms that foster trust over control, agile decision-making, transparency and inclusiveness. And we're also adapting relevant design thinking models that fits our purpose and healthcare as a complex adaptive system. And we think it's also very important to work across the 5 dimensions for system innovation so that we deal with initiatives related to technology, products and processes, including the medicines, but it's also about adapting business models, investments and procurements for procuring innovation, policy and regulations, of course, but also behavior, culture and values, and applying and make the most use of relevant infrastructure. Just like you, we're a small country and it's quite scattered, and we see also the importance of collaborating across the nation, but also across the borders in the Nordics and the new Nordics, but also, of course, with you, so that we can together deliver the best possible outcomes for all our citizens. And we have also developed our own principles to work together, because we think that navigating through complexity and getting things done really requires to align. We need the collective intelligence. We need people of all sorts of background and competences. And we need a leadership culture that we build on trust, courage, and power to act. We need to get things done. So we have defined some principles that help us in our work, and we think often when you model through the complexity, you don't really know what's really around the corner. Working with future changes, we use often quotes and metaphors and images that help us so that we can sort of develop the complexity into and sort out what is actually easy to get done, but also what is more complicated or complex tasks and what do they require to actually solve them. So the development of methodology and capacity building to deliver on the mission is very important for us. And if we have some time later in the panel, I can come back into what these actually mean. But it's really about making sure that you start with the right people, those who want. We talked about champions this morning, but you also need the endorsement, and others will follow along. And you build and you learn and iterate over time. That's what we mean with build the tracks while driving the train. Of course, healthcare in itself is very much regulated, and it's of course the processes, but it's more on how do you invent the ways of working together so it actually can be easier to accelerate the integration and the uptake of new initiatives. And it's also a lot about, as we heard before, the new ways of working to actually cater for the future in smart ways. And to dare to lead in complexity. We often say that you play in an orchestra together, and it's very important that each instruments have their time to play their own parts as well, and sometimes we have a lead instrument. But then you usually know what to play, and that's more like the processes of getting things done. But sometimes you don't really know, and then you have to play jazz together. So you have to more work with your senses and listen into each other and go with more of the gut feeling, and we think that's important. And by being that and also being prepared on the ground and also monitoring everything that's going around, connecting in these initiatives, they can be more easily and quickly prepared, but also in a systematic way to go on the right opportunities that the mission on cancer and the European Cancer Plan is offering to our countries. Last but not least, this is our organizational structure as it looks like right now. We think also that missions require a different approach to leadership that involves working with new partners and stakeholders across disciplines. And it can be that we also need to create new structures. We try to find ways of working more in systematic, bringing on in partnerships. There's a lot of letters of agreements between different stakeholders. We have a coordination office, which we call this fifth convening space, where we bring together a lot of different competences. It's important that you have a competent management team and strategic project staffing so that you can cover the different aspects of what you need to change, but also being agile in finding new ways and with new people. And what we're doing, I think, is quite a lot what's also being done in your case that you're trying to work with, of course, making sure that we can participate in European calls. It's about a lot of workshops, initiatives, meetings, of course, and to convene stakeholders across society in different initiatives and develop this governance mechanism. Then we've also created spin-off projects, and one of them is about a testbed for clinical trials. And in one of our projects that has also been extended to a European project, the Primrose, I know also Ireland is participating with your drop-like clinical trials. It's also about bringing trials to more patients, so that we can also, of course, come back to. So in a way, I think just to conclude then, is that missions are a way to help complex adaptive systems to reorientate themselves towards a better future, as we said, by providing a shared direction to inform. And we have to make it easier to collaborate. And I think the missions is really about that, and it's also a way to sort of promotes that, making it easier for us. So to make sure that nobody dies from cancer in the very future, I think the road to that vision is through multi-stakeholder partnerships and collaborations. So thank you very much. Yes, we save the questions for the panel, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. So just in the interest of time, we're going to save questions for the panel. I have about 10, so don't let me ask them all, because we have others. Do you want to sit at the front, because I think Mark's going to have some slides. So Professor Mark Lawler, is there anyone in the room who doesn't know Mark Lawler? So Mark is from Queen's University. He is a chair of translational cancer genomics at Queen's, and he's also a professor of digital health. He's been a very good friend to all of us in this room, particularly in the All-Ireland Cancer Research Initiative, a member of the steering group, a member of the Musketeers that fought very hard to get that MOU signed between NCI and the Department of Health. And really is a bit of a trailblazer, and we're all very proud of knowing him, because one of the things Mark has always done throughout his research is ensure patient involvement in research, and you ensure diversity of involvement in everything that we do. So it's a real privilege to invite Mark to the floor, and I have a feeling you have a few slides. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Evelyn. I'm a bit worried about when you told me you were a bouncer when you were in Queen's. I'll have to find out that story afterwards in the bar. This morning I said it was a disgrace that we didn't have an electronic patient record in the Republic of Ireland. Very impressed that the Minister then this afternoon said he's going to produce. So there's no problem here. Things actually happen very quickly. What I'd like to do, and I'm actually very taken by this poster here, I'm going to talk about evidence rather than opinion. I'm going to talk about leadership, which is really important. And I'm going to talk about quality, because that's the thing that we all aspire to and we all need to deliver. So I'm going to give you two examples of two stories. The first is the International Cancer Benchmarking Partnership. And again, the Minister actually talked about this in his speech this morning. So I'm privileged to chair this group, essentially 8 different countries, 21 jurisdictions throughout the world. And what we're doing is we're looking to see what are the differences in cancer outcomes and cancer survival and cancer diagnosis, and why are they different? And can we learn from those to actually get some information? So you can see Ireland and Northern Ireland and the 4 UK nations all participated in this, as well as states in Canada, in Australia, and then in Europe, Denmark, Sweden, and then Norway is going to be joining us as well. So again, a pretty wide mix of but similar healthcare systems. So I think what we compare, and one of the things we do is we benchmark, and I think we benchmark appropriately between countries that are similar. So this is just one study I'm just going to highlight, a study that we published earlier this year in Lancet Oncology. What we did was we wanted to look at the relationship between consistent cancer policy and cancer outcomes. And we did it with 7 different cancers. We had the data from all the different countries and jurisdictions that I mentioned. I'm just focusing on, if you like, 10 of those that we focused on in relation to this study. And what we can see is we developed what we called a policy scorecard. So we're able to show first that, yes, consistent cancer policy led to better outcomes in 6 of those 7 cancers. So that was very clear association between the two. But then when we look at a policy scorecard, which we developed, and we look to see, well, what's happening? Ireland's actually doing pretty well, top 4, upper half of the table, room for improvement, but doing very well. And that's reflected in the fact that we've had consistent cancer policy, 3 different cancer control programs, all following on each other, logical progression. Denmark is the top, and that's really interesting because if you look up when the International Cancer Benchmarking was set up, first of all, by Mike Richards in the UK was at the bottom, and so was Denmark. So Denmark have actually changed over that intervening period. So it shows that you can make change and that you can measure that change and look at ways in which you can actually identify what were the key things that they did. I'm happy to sort of say that in the questions. What I'm not so happy with is the country that I live in, not the country that I'm from. We're bottom of the list, Northern Ireland. Why are we bottom of the list? Because we've implemented one cancer strategy in the last 20 years. I'm ashamed saying that. I'm obviously from Northern Ireland. I'm very proud to work in Northern Ireland, but I'm ashamed to be saying that. But unfortunately, that's the reality. And if you look, the rest of the United Kingdom isn't that much better. Wales is also low, Scotland and England as well. So it shows you that you do need to look at linking cancer policy to actually cancer delivery and cancer care delivery in relation to outcomes. So I suppose the take-home message is Ireland is doing well, Northern Ireland not so well, not well at all in fact, and we both need to do a Denmark. The second thing I want to do then is talk about the importance of data and the importance of intelligence as it's highlighted here in the NCCP poster. We know, I think, that we have a challenge in relation to cancer, particularly in the context of post-COVID, also the economic downturn, and also even the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And again, I can share why that's the case as we look slightly more. But what's really important is that we make decisions too often based on opinion. What we did here was we decided not to make our decisions based on opinion, but actually to collect the data. So it's the most comprehensive analysis of cancer research in Europe that's ever been performed. Brought together 50 different people from a wide variety of areas, patient advocates, different disciplines, researchers, etc. And what we did was we looked to see what actually is really happening in Europe. So what are the key things that are happening in research? What are we doing well? What are we not doing so well? And can we use that to inform how we go forward rather than saying, oh, we need to do this because 5 bigwigs said that was the thing to do. And one of the things we've tried to do is develop 12 recommendations, which I'll briefly share with you, but also we issued a call for action through the Lancet Oncology Ground Shot Commission. So this is a commission that was commissioned by the Lancet Oncology, by David Collinridge, the editor, and I was privileged to be the lead of this program. We reimagined cancer research and also its implementation across Europe, but also very much looking at realities on the ground. And one of the things, and we were quite deliberate and maybe somewhat provocative in terms of calling it a ground shot rather than a moonshot, because we wanted to look and see what are the key things that we actually need to change now in order for us to deliver better outcomes for our patients. And the first thing we did was we modeled what would success look like. So again, what Ebba said is, start at the end in terms of what you want to achieve. So what we want to achieve is a 70-35 vision. That's 70% long-term survival for the 20 million people who are living with or beyond cancer by 2035. The second thing we proved conclusively, and I mentioned this in the questions earlier, is that patients who are treated in research-active hospitals have better outcomes than those who are not. Sorry, this is a very long room, so apologies for not turning around to you over there, but I'll try and go back and forward. So research very much is a luxury. It's not a luxury, it's very much a necessity and needs to be an important part of how we deliver 21st century cancer care. Just going to show you some of the data very quickly. So if we look at cancer research in Europe and compare Eastern Europe and Western Europe, we see a significant difference. Booming essentially in Western Europe, stagnant in Eastern Europe. That's not acceptable. No matter where you live, you should have access to the same advances in cancer research, and that was our second and third recommendation. The second thing is we think we're spending a lot on cancer research in Europe. However, if we compare ourselves